What's up, everyone, and welcome back to HateWatchers. Today we continue on with another 3 episodes of Andor, episodes 4, 5, and 6, entitled Ever Been to Gorman, I Have Friends Everywhere, and What a Festive Evening, respectively. Now let's jump right into the breakdown. Spoilers ahead. We open up 1 year later, where Bix is still having nightmares about the doctor that molested her mind. Then she talks about decorating, and then she cries. Over on Gorman, Cyril Karn is getting used to being spied on in the bathroom, but we see that he's now the section chief for the Imperial Standards and Ways Division or whatever it's called. Some rebel outfit on Gorman is listening in as his mom is asking Cyril if she needs to send him some new underwear, again. Later, when he's crop dusting the people protesting the Empire, this guy sells him a spider, and when Cyril gets home, he pops it open like a Kinder Egg and finds a juicy invitation to a town hall. Then he calls the old ball and chain to let her know that he's made inroads with the Gorman rebels. We get a very brief segment of Mon Mothma trying and failing to rally other senators against an upcoming bill before we descend into the bowels of Coruscant, where Luthen presses his man inside the ISB for more information about Dr. Gorst, the mind molester. Cyril attends the town hall where everyone's complaining about the Imperials doing Imperial things, and he comes face to face with the rebel leader who entreats him for aid. Meanwhile, Andor sees Luthen's bat signal and meets with him. Luthen wants him to go to Gorman and assess the situation on the ground with those rebels. Then we move to Dakar because 6 years later, Disney is still trying to justify the sequel trilogy. And here, Will shows off some piece of tech to Saw Gerrera and his band of rebels, a device meant to access rhydonium, a highly volatile substance. And Will learns that his internship with this group will continue indefinitely. And then we see that Bix has resorted to chasing the Blue Dragon, but at least it's better than Death Sticks, and the episode comes to an end. In episode 2, Luthen's assistant Clea is finally starting to become a good DJ, and we learn that she's fueled by Pop-Tarts. Andor, in preparation for heading to Gorman, meets with alien Dolph Lundgren and picks up his backstory for the mission. Cyril's busy telling his mom not to worry, he's still pooping regularly like a big boy, when the ISB storms in to sweep for listening devices. Later, he heads home and the local rebels approach him for information on Imperial shipments. Luthen visits Bix to cheer her up, but then he tries to take her drugs and, surprisingly, Bix doesn't appreciate that. Will is busy training Saw Gerrera's man on the device, and Cyril heads out of town, but not before passing some information to the spider salesman. Then we get some assistant-on-assistant action as Clea, who's found out that Skulden is about to stumble onto their listening device, is pumping his assistant for information. Cyril gives his mom a pet spider that she names Cyril, and Bix veggies out watching some drag queen story hour. On Gorman, Andor goes undercover as a flamboyant fashion designer and meets with the rebel leader, who wants him to advise them on their plan to steal an Imperial transport. And Cyril gets some good boy points and pats on the head from the ISB chief. Meanwhile, Saw asks his man if he's ready so they can dispose of Will, and Will grows suspicious, and to think he was just trying to enjoy this Nutri-Grain bar. Later, Saw puts a blaster to Will's head, but he instead shoots his own man, deducing that he is, or at least presenting him as, a traitor, and then they take off toward their mission and blast into hyperspace. When Andor tells the leader that his group can't get this done, the man levies some insults toward Andor and Luthen and storms off without finishing his Dr. Pepper. It's a dark and stormy night when we find Will extracting rhydonium. When he finally gains access to it, Saw Gerrera charges up and immediately begins huffing the fumes and reminiscing on his years in the trailer park, before convincing Will to partake, as he welcomes him into his partisans and the episode comes to an end. Episode 3 begins with Andor telling Luthen the Gorman are not up to this task, and Luthen explains that he doesn't care about the fallout, only the message it will send to have a planet like Gorman standing up to the Empire, placing his goals in stark contrast to Andor's person-centric approach. But Luthen always has a backup plan, as Vel is already on Gorman. Back on Coruscant, Andor is pissed to learn that Luthen was here without him knowing, so he heads to Luthen's shop, breaking protocol just to bitch him out, and Andor says he'd be better off without Bix involved. A poor choice of words to use with Luthen, who's probably already thinking of where to dump her body. On Gorman, Vel is reunited with her lesbian secret agent lover, and they're helping the Gormans plan their theft of the Imperial transport. Back Coruscant way, Andor and Bix get another bat signal from Luthen, and then back on Gorman, Cinta and Vel make out. After getting emotional hearing the pledge of Imperial allegiance at the Senate, Mon and her consort go to Skulden's party, where they run into the newly recast Senator Organa. As the Gorman rebels are preparing for their heist, Cyril is hidden, reporting everything back to the ISB. At the party, a small group is given a tour of this artifact collection, including Director Krennic, and Clea brings along her inside man to run cover as she removes their listening device. Back at the heist, they zap the transport and Cinta goes into superhero mode. Back at the party, Clea hits a snag as Mon Mothma and Krennic spar over differing views of history. Meanwhile, some Gorman wants to take a closer look at the robbery and he wrestles with one of the rebels, and this results in Cinta getting shot. They chuck her body into their transport like a side of beef and make off with the stolen goods as the Imperials arrive, and Vel takes this opportunity to guilt-trip the guy who shot Cinta and extol her lesbian lover's virtues. And Clea and Luthen make off with the device in hand, boasting how they love it when a plan comes together. And finally, Bix ambushes the Mind Molester, straps him to his own torture device, and Andor triggers a bomb in the building as the episode comes to an end. Well, we've reached that point in the video where we have to decide if these episodes were great watches or hate watches. I think there were a few things to like here, but on the whole, I would rank this 3-episode arc below the first 3-episode arc. And I didn't rate that first arc all that highly. So I'd give episodes 4 and 5 debate watch labels and put episode 6 down as a great watch. Once again, we had 4 major storylines to follow. Cyril and the ISB infiltrating the Gorman rebels, Will working with Saw Gerrera's partisans, Bix and Andor coping with their new lives, and Luthen and Clea working to shore up their little espionage enterprise. And I kinda liked Will working with Saw, mainly because I think we got a really good look at Saw and his belief system. But I enjoyed Cyril and Luthen and Clea's storylines quite a bit. Both of those storylines went deep into the kind of spycraft and undercover maneuvering that Andor does well, the type of storytelling I'm here for with this series. But to say it was once again a slow build in the early going is an understatement. I found episode 1 to be pretty damn slow and borderline boring. And as I said in the last video, these 3-episode arcs are all about building up to the payoffs in the 3rd episode. So with that in mind, I felt that the payoffs for this arc were underwhelming, with only a few of those storylines giving us something approaching a satisfying payoff. And it's a lot to ask of people to stay engaged through nearly 3 hours of screen time for less than satisfying payoffs. Still though, I feel even more justified in defending this release schedule, because even those less than satisfying payoffs are much better received than they would be if we had to slog through episodes 4 and 5 in back-to-back weeks without a payoff. Mon Mothma was much less of a focus in this arc, and while I think her scenes even in the first arc were often tedious, the actress does so well with the role that I'd still like to see more of her. These episodes handled jumping between storylines much better, I will say, as episodes 1 through 3 had some real jarring, spastic jumps back and forth. Now I really liked the brief scene where Luthen and Andor sparred over the Gorman Rebellion, with both of their ideologies about their goals being laid out plainly. And Luthen delivering this fantastic line toward the end.
Think about a planet like Gorman in rebellion. If it goes up in flames, it will burn very brightly.
On a lore note, the show chose to separate the Star Wars Legends version of the Gorman Massacre from the one we're yet to see in the show. They called the Legends version event the Tarkin Massacre, named after Grand Moff Tarkin, who landed a ship on 500 Gormans. So it was cool to see them not just completely erase that Legends event from the canon lore. And on that note, I liked how the show presented how a year later, the Empire has slowly but surely progressed their master plan of oppressing Gorman, with the planet and its people suffering and now, too little too late, forming a resistance in the vein of the French underground. Moving to something that didn't jive with me, it seems silly that this specific Gorman, who earlier was flipping off anyone who would defend the Empire, couldn't be talked out of getting a better look at the heist, which led to Cinta getting shot. Like, all it takes is letting him in a little bit on what's happening, and for a show that's supposed to be a realistic, gritty approach to Star Wars, his belligerence and the rebels' inability to keep him from getting closer felt pretty damn contrived. Also, I'm over Bix's trauma. I get it, that's her story so far this season, and it seems like she'll be able to leave it in the past from this point on, but I'm over it, and I hope it's done with. Not interested in it. Finishing with a few positives, I loved seeing Forrest Whitaker back as Saw Gerrera and giving us the most Saw Gerrera Saw we've seen yet. I liked that we got some explanation of his breathing problems that he has by the time of Rogue One. I liked the small allusion to his sister's death, which happened in other Star Wars media. And I loved him embracing his role as a Chaos Agent, not only because it's fun television, but also because it brings his character more in line with the reputation he has in other Star Wars shows and media. Lastly, the music has been on point this season. There are nice themes and subtle callbacks to other more recognizable Star Wars music, and it always fits the moment perfectly. One example of a great theme, when we first see Cyril and Gorman, there's a great musical segment that manages to incorporate crawling spider elements as well as some spy themes, the former fitting Gorman's spider-centric industry, and the latter alluding to Cyril's role on the planet, a role which could also be compared to a spider working its way into the Gorman Rebellion's operations. It's a small thing, but it really takes some scenes up a notch. And while most of this review portion is fairly positive, it's because I didn't touch too much on what I didn't like. Without the Star Wars label, which, at times, this show has a tenuous grip on at best, I'd probably have checked out during Bix's 4th PTSD episode. I'm just not real interested in some of what this show focuses on. That doesn't mean it's not well made or that it's bad storytelling. It's just not what interests me in Star Wars. I want to go to a galaxy far, far away, not down the street to Becky's house where she's doing heroin to cope with her trauma. What did you think about this 3-episode arc? How did it stack up against the first one for you? Let us know in the comments below. Also remember to like the video if you liked it and subscribe to HateWatchers to stay up to date on Andor. Thank you for enjoying some galactic Pop-Tarts with us today, and we'll catch you on the next one.